Well, President-elect Trump is off and running. He's appointing individuals and nominating them for cabinet positions. And one of the most controversial and newest cabinet positions is the Department of Governmental Efficiency. How will this affect federal agencies? How will this impact the Commonwealth of Virginia, one of the largest places and employers of federal services here in the country? It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille. We'll be right back in just a moment. Welcome back. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille. Thank you for joining us as you always do on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's a little nippy. Seasons are changing, but it's still a beautiful morning. Once again, we'd like to thank you for supporting us as we broadcast, as we always do, from the campus of the Norfolk State University, home of the Spartan Nation, from none other than WNSB Hot 91, the soul of VA. And we'd like to thank you for being our supporters for all that you do and have done throughout this entire year. Listen, this week is Turkey Week. It's a time of Thanksgiving. We want you to be thankful for all things that are happening in your life because God has truly blessed us all. So we've got many things to be thankful for. As we continue down our series of post-election, we're looking now at the actions of current President-elect Donald Trump. He's appointing and nominating individuals to his cabinet, and he's off and running, making more promises and standing on his campaign stump speeches to deliver to his supporters, the country, and to the world. But one of those agencies that he's created or wanting to create and appoint two very influential in business individuals, but very controversial to federal government, is the Department of Government Efficiency. He's here nominated Elon Musk, of course, we know is the billionaire founder of Tesla and, of course, SpaceX and various things, inventions and things that he's spearheaded. And also Vivek Ramaswamy, who is made his money in finance and also former candidate for president. According to Business Insider, their goal is to delete some entire federal agencies. Here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we know that the federal government is one of the largest, if not the largest, driver of jobs. We have many people, not just in Hampton Roads with the Department of Defense, but also in Northern Virginia, where many of our governmental agencies are headquartered and many people that work at those agencies actually live. What is the impact of such rhetoric like this? And if it becomes a reality, if these policies go into effect, if it becomes law, what is the hit to the bottom line of the Commonwealth of Virginia, its economy, the people, and more importantly, the impact of our nation by deleting various agencies in the name of quote unquote efficiency? Joining us to talk about this very important topic, this part two, is my good friend, none other than, you know him. He's been on here many times and he is a legend in this area. Dr. Will LaVice, author and award-winning journalist. Will, how you feel, my brother?
Hey, doing great, man. Thanks. Always good to be back with you, my friend, even under these circumstances.
Listen, for everybody that's listening to us, we've been talking about this, and one thing that Will has always said, he said, get your popcorn. Get your popcorn.
Yep, get your popcorn.
We're
or red vodka, or some of that gourmet. You may want to order some of those gourmet popcorns, those fundraisers. This is good. Keep it coming.
Man,
you're gonna need it.
Man, look, we're looking at some of these proposed picks to his cabinet. We're going to talk more about that at 12:30 today on the Clavier Report, Law, Policy, and Politics. So come back and tune in there. Stay tuned in to 91.1, and we'll break it down with none other than Maynard Scales, WNSB Hot 91's very own, where we look at the cabinet picks. But one thing we want to take a look at in this show is the actual Department of Government Efficiency. Now, according to Business Insider, it's called DOGE for short, but DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, wants to delete entire federal agencies, according to Vivek Ramaswamy, who is the co-head of this particular new department. He said it's expected the wholesale closure of some agencies. He and Elon Musk have been empowered by Trump to recommend big cuts to the state. many cuts will require Congress to approve through Ramaswamy, though Ramaswamy said that there are some loopholes. Will, before I go into this article and 7 key areas that I want to talk about on the show, just listening to that type of talk, that rhetoric, what comes to mind to you?
Well, that position is the bloviate committee. You know, that's what comes to mind for me, is that it's really a space for Ms. Swamy and Elon Musk to just be able to bloviate and talk and say extreme things like what they both have been doing, you know, for quite a while. You know, and a lot of what they're talking about wholesale changes and getting rid of government agencies. A lot of what they're talking about, they don't have the power to do it. And it's not that soon-to-be President Trump is going to be able to just stroke a pen in executive order and do it. It requires an act of Congress. And we've already seen, just in this short time, that though the Republicans will control both houses, making any kind of change will not be easy, because all of those members know that there will be consequences if they make changes that the American people do not favor. So,
well, as a matter of fact, Business Insider Jack Newsham said that Republicans in control of both chambers, the Department of Government Efficiency, may have some success in cutting government spending and red tape. However, eliminating federal agencies could be a big ask, though. They're generally created by Congress and could require difficult votes to abolish. And we all know that all politics is local. You vote to abolish an agency that your district is dependent upon, you're not getting reelected. Matter of fact, you may get recalled. So we know that Republicans have a majority in Senate, but too few seats for a 60-vote supermajority, and that GOP control of the House also rests on a very thin majority as well. However, Ramaswamy, in his own presidential bid, and this is how far out this is, Will, in his own bid, he advocated for elimination of all agencies, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the FBI. What?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm getting at. If you go back, pay attention to his speeches on the stump, he was just saying a lot of wild, outlandish things. It was almost as if, okay, this guy's really not serious about his candidacy. He's really in this look at me, watch me mode. Just give me attention, putting himself in a position where, he just has a platform, he just has a place to be heard. So, it really comes down to, again, I like looking at history and things that have happened before, and think about when President Obama came in and had both houses. I mean, both the House and the Senate, both chambers. And he was trying to get the Affordable Care Act pushed through. And some people, many of them in his own party, wanted him to go even further. So if you remember the kind of consternation that was going back and forth, that wasn't an easy thing for him to get done, and he had both chambers. And then what happened in the midterms?
It got shellacked.
It got shellacked. And a lot of it because the messaging about how bad the Affordable Care Act was supposed to be. Now, time has tested and shown that, the country actually, prefers the Affordable Care Act. But at that time, there was a lot of problems with it. There was a lot of confusion with it. But the main thing that the politicians were concerned about, hey, if I make this vote, am I going to get booted out of office?
Exactly.
And they absolutely got shellacked. And then he spent, the rest of his term really having a lot of difficulty at getting anything else that he really wanted to get done. So that's the dynamics of Congress. That's the reality. So he may have both chambers, but it's not going to be as easy as people may think.
Absolutely. According to Business Insider, he said to expect Ramaswamy quote, certain agencies to be deleted outright. Now, we know that won't happen, but who knows? Reductions in headcount, I think, for bloated areas of government and massive cuts to federal contracting. Now, Will, I think that's an area where I think we really need to focus. Where he talks about cuts to manpower and bloating, these services are needed. And I think, and again, I'm saying this on every show, every television station. When you talk about government efficiency, that's simply code word for privatization. Because at the end of the day, these services are needed. The question becomes, who gets the contracts? So if I give a contract, if I take away the federal job, but I still need that service, and I turn around and give a huge contract to a company who turns around and hires these people that was working for the federal government, is that cutting federal waste?
It doesn't, on its face, doesn't sound like it. And that's why it's real important that people pay close attention. You said earlier, all politics is really local. People need to pay close attention. So there in Virginia, as you said, very government-oriented state. You got Maryland. You got just the DMV in general. There's a lot of jobs that would be at stake. And to be fair, there's an argument to be made about government efficiency. We know that. We know that things could be leaner, but getting rid of wholesale departments, that's unrealistic.
But Will, isn't there something to be said about efficiency of everything? Our households, corporations, foundations. Exactly. I mean,
exactly. And not to speak of the the military. I mean, our military spending dwarfs.
Oh my gosh.
China, Russia, and these are, considered our, big so-called main adversaries. And you still hear some of our Congress people talking about, well, the military is depleted. It needs additional spending. Our spending already dwarfs other nations. So, absolutely, you start talking about efficiencies and wholesale cuts. If they approach their role in an honest, serious way, they're going to find that the departments that the Republicans want to prop up the most, like the military, is going to be areas where you would say, well, we obviously we're going to make some shavings here. Here is where we need to look at.
Absolutely. Well, according to Business Insider, it says on the campaign trail, Trump pledged to abolish the Department of Education, describing the agency as a means to indoctrinate America's youth. As a matter of fact, Marie...
The Federal Department of Education indoctrinates youth in Newport News. I thought it was the Newport News School District that impacted the children in Newport News. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. As a matter of fact, when we take a look at some of his choices, Linda McMahon, who is pegged to be the next Secretary of Education, and for those of you that may not know her, she led the Small Business Association under Trump's first administration, which we know administered something called PPP loans. Right. All the way throughout the nation, which went to some of the wealthiest companies in America, along with
a little bit of fraud, a little bit of shenanigans went on there. But go ahead.
Yeah, but people may not know her, but her famous husband, Vince McMahon, who is the founder of WWE Wrestling. However, with that, Will. One thing under this particular secretary is that Trump said he wants to bring back school choice to America's families, and also bring education. Now, this is pre-Brown versus Board education. He wants to bring education back to the states because they believe that the Department of Education is indoctrinating our youth. Will, this speaks segregation all over again.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important that people pay attention, that people pay attention closely, and that they actually understand how government works, how their local government works, and its relationship to the federal government, and why things happened in the past the way that they did and why it was so important. So, as you just said, you're in Virginia, where the state that anybody knows their history, this is a state of massive resistance when the federal government said that separate but equal schools was inherently unequal and abolished it. So if you put education back in the hands of individual states, now they get to, if they have an inclination to be discriminatory, they get an opportunity to just do their own thing. So, yeah, this is why it's important that people pay attention and really understand how government works, really understand where the pressure points are and what can be done and what can't be done, and don't believe all of the hype.
Well, do you think that some of this will happen and people will see that they've been sold pretty much a pipe dream?
That pretty much a what?
They've been sold a pipe dream, bamboozled, led astray?
Yeah, like we've been talking about before, people don't pay close enough attention, and we're very distracted, and we're very self-oriented in the sense that people are focused on their pocketbook issues. So they're willing to, let Trump run amok, let the rhetoric fly, but they're saying, hey, if it means my, bread and eggs, ability to buy a house will go down, the cost will go down, then I'm willing to take that. But you got to pay attention to what is really going on and what's really being said. And a lot of this, like I said, a lot of this bloviating, a lot of this rhetoric is really like a shell game. It's designed to distract and deflect and deflect. And if you're not paying attention, that's where the selling of the pipe dream is going to hit you. And that pipe is not going to feel good on the back of your head.
But, Will, they're not paying attention. If they were paying attention, they would not have voted for this. So do you think?
If they were paying attention?
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. They're not paying attention. They're focused on, people wanted disruption. People wanted a disruptor because they didn't feel like the economy as it's currently run is working for them.
Hey,
so
Will, disruption, not destruction. And look, speaking of the economy, I don't know about you, but the stock market is doing well for people with money.
Yeah, that means you're doing real well,
There you go.
But Joe and Jim and Diane and Karen, in the regular people in the street, they're not feeling that trickle down, that success, that stock success as much.
So because of that, do you now nominate a bunch of people in your cabinet and office who are millionaires and billionaires, and think that that's going to help the regular people on the street?
Well, that's a rhetorical question, my friend.
All right. Well, look, let's take a little deeper dive into this, because I want our audience to understand the impact that this is going to have, because it's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille, and today we're talking about the Department of Government Efficiency, a new department that's being created under the Trump administration that's due to dissolve themselves in 2026. Appointed to this department is Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. These two millionaires and billionaires believe that they have the plan to make government more efficient. But in doing so, some believe, and many also agree, that they're going to go through and make some controversial decisions, and to do it, use some controversial history in court ruling. With that, the Department of Governmental Efficiency, short for, it's known as DOGE, will rely heavily on executive orders and court rulings instead of Congress, they said. And also, they said they're going to take aim at funding for public media and Planned Parenthood. Now, according to the Business Insider, last week, Musk and Ramaswamy outlined their vision for DOGE, which Musk previously said would cut $2 trillion from the federal budget. That's a lot of money. With that, they said their opinion piece, published in Wall Street Journal, is lengthy and dense, filled with Supreme Court rulings and decades of old statutes. But here is the main takeaway from it. They're going to staff their particular department with what they call government crusaders and work with the Office of Management and budget. Now, you and I both know we come from religious backgrounds and we understand religiosity and we understand the religious right. And anytime you attach being a crusader to something, that means that you have a moral conviction and you have a calling above this earth to do your job. How dangerous is that, Will?
Well, it's dangerous in the sense that you put people in positions like Musk, who, by the way, it makes millions, if not billions, on government contracts.
Billions.
Right. Right. So now it puts you in a position where you're willing to overlook that obvious conflict of interest because somehow he must have a mandate from on high to do what he's doing. And again, people have to pay attention. People have to understand government. People have to understand that God, in the Word, says is most concerned about the least of these and most concerned about the people who are most in need. Yeah. So why would God put someone of immense wealth like that in power and conflicts of interest and lord them over the people if God is a God who's concerned for the least of those among us? It doesn't compute. So again, we got to pay attention and we got to be realistic and we got to be sober and not dissuade and distracted by every sleight of tongue.
Well, Will, they also said that they will oversee 3 categories: regulatory rescissions, administrative reductions, and cost savings. And this particular office will include, they say, some of the sharpest technical and legal minds. Will, in order to do this, they're going to turn to recent court rulings as a guide. They cited West Virginia versus the EPA, a 2022 Supreme Court ruling in which the court restricted the agency's ability to regulate carbon emissions, and Bright versus Raimondo, a 2024 ruling where the court overturned a case, Chevron versus Natural Resources Defense 84, which dictated that federal courts should defer to federal agencies in their interpretation of statutes. In overturning it, the Supreme Court stripped agencies of significant power. They state, and they believe, that's Musk and Ramaswamy, that these rulings give them from the court point to regulations that exceed the authority Congress has granted under law, and they believe that rolling back a range of illicit regulations will create economic prosperity in the country, and they wrote that this would move a major step remedying what they deem to be executive overreach. Will, anytime I hear individuals in business talk about rolling back regulations and prosperity, that means do what I want to do. Remember, it was regulations, I call them protectionisms, that stopped companies from dumping mercury in the ocean.
Right.
That's why fish have such high levels of mercury. It was regulations or protectionisms that caused your gas tank not to be put in the back by your trunk, but on the side, which stopped cars from blowing up when you got rear-ended. Protectionism.
Regulations that got us wearing seatbelts and saving lives. Yeah.
Right. So, again, when you talk about emissions, these are companies wanting to unleash fossil fuels and dump in the environment wherever they want. And again, to me, this just speaks to a lot of rolling back protectionisms and hurting the people and which is what government's supposed to do, protect people.
And I think that what people want to do, again, think about what President Biden has been trying to accomplish on the student loans front, right? He spent his whole term trying to get student loan reform, and what happened? There was several court cases that went against him and have been filed and have delayed it. And I think that you can expect much of the same, that there are bright lawyers like yourself who are sharpening up their pens and, dialing up their invoices, because when all of these suits go to flying, the only people that's going to get paid is the lawyers. They're the ones that's going to get paid. And so anything that they attempt to do in terms of rolling back, especially using the courts, is going to just end up being delayed in the court. So, again, folks, get your money right. Pay
That's
attention
it.
to what's going on. Pay attention.
Get your
and
money
be able
right.
to position yourself to take advantage of any opportunities that come your way, because there's just a lot of bloviating going on and a lot of distracting, because I'm certain what Musk is going to be doing is making more and more billions for himself as he's distracting everybody else, and they're not paying attention to what he's doing.
Well, you already know a billionaire doesn't give away his money other than Warren Buffett, but he makes it back, right? I mean, greed is a very powerful, drug, And once you get more, you want more, and once you get more, guess what you want?
And people should be appalled by somebody who has obvious conflicts of interest being in a role where they can potentially affect what happens with government agencies. People should be appalled at that.
But
people should really be paying attention to that.
But they should be appalled at the person that is current that they voted for with all of this baggage. They should be appalled at. I mean, that means nothing to them. That means nothing. And I'm saying this because, there are many things that persons say, oh, you shouldn't do this or do that, but yet and still you pick this person to represent you.
Yeah, and in fact, and we're learning as the data is coming out that voter turnout was actually up in terms of at some of the highest rates in the country's history. It's just that on the Democratic side, it was down, and especially in some key areas. So apparently some folks who have been on the sidelines, as well as people who were already inclined to vote for Trump, came out in force, while the Democrats, and especially in some key locations, did otherwise. So, people, American people, we are a nation of laws in the vote and respecting the vote and the results. So you voted who you voted for, and you're going to get what you're going to get.
That's it. Look, I want to address two quick things before we end. Time is passing. I mean, but listen, we got plenty to talk about, right? So reducing the size of federal workforce. This is where Virginia comes in, more specifically. They believe that by eliminating federal regulations, there should be a mass headcount reduction across federal bureaucracy. He said that, quote, employees whose positions are eliminated deserve to be treated with respect, and DOGE goal is to help their support, is to help support their transition where? Into the private sector. The president can use existing laws to give them incentives for early retirement and make voluntary severance payments to facilitate what they call a graceful exit. And Musk and Ramaswamy poured cold water on pandemic-era work-from-home policy as they aim to reform government finances. Requiring federal employees to come to the office 5 days a week will result in a wave of voluntary terminations that they welcome. And this is what they actually wrote. Will a massive headcount in federal jobs come back to work, no work from home? What does this mean for Virginia?
Well, it's going to be very negatively impactful for Virginia, because you're talking about fewer people having fewer dollars in their pockets to spend in the economy. I'm not seeing how that's going to fuel, economic growth if you've got fewer people who would have discretionary spending income no longer having that income. I'm not seeing that. So I don't think you have to be an award-winning economist to see that. Why do that? So I just again, I can't stress enough. People really need to pay attention to what they voted for.
Absolutely.
And act accordingly.
Well, one thing that we're going to do on this show is we're going to pay attention and bring it to you, as it's always changing. And we're going to make sure that you get the updated information so that you can make a well-informed decision. It's been Stay in the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille. Thank you for joining us, as you always do. And on this Sunday and throughout the week, start this week off right and give God thanks, especially in the season of Thanksgiving. Until next time, be good, be great, God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Carrie Washington, and you're listening to State of the Water with award-winning host Dr. Eric Claville.